or partner. We're getting there. Who came with their children? Yes. Who came with a future spouse or partner? We are planning ahead. This we are here to plan your legacy. Who came with a future spouse or partner? That one is not here today. Okay. And that's the essence of this breakfast. We are family here, and we are continuing the work that we did last year. Last year we had a wonderful event. It was a full day, and the purpose of the day was to understand the challenges we are having as family businesses. Betty and our dear friend here, who come and have done a wonderful job of creating a community that we are now starting to see every year. Now, for example, Mrs. Bainge there has come with her daughters this year. I'm so happy. Last year she came alone. There she is. You can clap for her. She has a sheep. Oh, I forgot to ask, who came alone? Oh, I'm so sorry. Very sorry. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the day. And please clap for them. We'd like to thank us.
So, guys, welcome to yet another edition of Kasuku Live. Olunaku lwayo tusinzidde wano ku Protea Hotel atannaba kusembera wandibadde osembera tuli ku I&M Bank Succession Planning Breakfast. Twakedde ku makya tubadde tukyaludde okukeera naye tugamba katujje. So basically olunaku olwaleero tulina abakatende Ssempeebwa advocates we bali wano tulina aba I&M Bank aba Enjovu be bategese business breakfast eno bagenda kuba basically boogera ku succession planning gwali eyo okuwanika ekiraamo business zo z'okoze osobola otya ozireka abaana ne basigala nga bazitwala mu maaso so bye bintu ebigenda okuba nga byogerwa. It's very important that you pay keen interest in what is going to be discussed. It's going to be very, very vital. So yeah, abantu abasinga ze tukola mu bulamu naye abasajja bano aba Enjovu family Enjovu family business basazeewo nabo baliko Enjovu basazeewo okubeera nti emisomo gino bagireeta. So tugenda kubanga tutandikawo ekyo olunaku olwaleero luli action packed betunaamala wano ate tulina okuddayo ko somewhere tulabe betukwasaganya ebintu ebirala. Live eno eri powered by I&M Bank Uganda. Abakugamba nti get yourself a MasterCard, I&M Bank MasterCard. Benva wano ngenda wali ku Serena ngenda mu spa ngenda kuba mbalaga MasterCard ebintu ebimu byesobola okubeera nga ekkolera. But as of now, today on the camera is Mr. Ronnie. He can't keep time, but he's here. Regardless, we move. Njagadde mundabeko mutegeere nti sebo ebirimu begitabuka ate naffe tuvaayo ekintu ekisobola okubeera nga tukikwasaganya. Katugende mu business breakfast eno ate tugenda kubeera nga tubaddira twongere okubabuulira ate ebintu nga bigenda okuba nga bitambula. Ronnie, hearing men, tugende abantu twayo.
Last year we are proud to have hosted our first family business conference that attracted over 150 family business owners. And like our MC mentioned, thank you very much. And like our MC mentioned, we have in the room some of the family business owners that came last year. And I believe by the time they brought their family members, they achieved a lot from the event. So thank you to all that came last year and are here today. And today we are proud to host our first of two events. So we will be having another event in October. We will be reaching out to you, but you can mark that in your calendar. In October, we will have our family business conference. And today we are having a succession planning breakfast in partnership with I&M Bank and Kasuku Live. Thank you very much for the support. And yes, I don't want to spoil what is going to happen. I know there is a lot that is going to be shared. Please do ask questions, We are here to learn, we are here to share, we are here to grow. Thank you very much once again. Over to you, MC.
Thank you very much, Irene. As you can see, we are now starting to move. Everything is moving seriously. I would like to ask Annette from INM Bank to please come and introduce Robin. Annette is the head of marketing and communications at INM Bank. He will be giving us a presentation from INM Bank. Annette here. This is not Annette, this is that's what we do here.
Thank you. Annette is still swallowing juice this morning, so she asked me to take the honors. Distinguished guests, partners, friends, all protocol observed. Welcome to this morning breakfast organized by the powerful ladies, the proud women. Let's give it a hand clap. My name is Edward Gibson Angono. I'm the Chief Business Officer at the bank. And my job is simple: to introduce, invite the CEO to speak to you. It will be kind of limiting for me if I speak for long. But Robin is not new to Uganda. He returned last October after 20 years, and in his word, it's a changed country. Robin is a seasoned banker and has been involved in banking in Uganda, Kenya, Indonesia, international, and most recently Iran. He's currently the CEO of INM Bank Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Robin.
Thank you, Gibson, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I must say, in my long career as a banker, I've had the opportunity to go to a number of state dinners, and a lot of the countries in the Southern African region, their presidents have praise singers. And I've always thought, you know, when the man walks forward, the president is walking, his praise singer has walks ahead of him and tells everybody what a great man he is, how many cows he has, the fact that his father's only children, he's the greatest man. So I felt a little bit like that this morning, so thank you very much. It's, to have my own praise singer, it's a very good experience. In fact, my home country of South Africa, our president, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, as a praise singer for official functions, not just when he goes to the store to buy groceries and that, but when for official functions. So good morning, as he said, my name is Robin Besto. I'm the CEO of INM Bank here in Uganda. I've been here since October, but I was here in the early 2000s, and I would say that the real catalyst within my career. So it was really nice to have the opportunity to come back, having gone away, learned a lot, and then come back to use that in my new role. The INM Bank, I don't know if you know much about INM Bank. Orient Bank is the bank that was here, that was established, also a family business. And in fact, 80% of all businesses in Uganda are family businesses. Because if you're running a business and you have a family, it's a family business. So you need to bear that in mind. That even a lot of businesses start from very humble beginnings. In fact, this bank started off as a corner shop. That's what it was. That was the beginning of INM Bank. It was a corner store that was created by the current majority shareholders' grandfather. They came from India, at the turn of the last century, and they were trading and they were providing in Mombasa. And it grew from there to, because they could send money, they remitted funds on behalf of people that were working in East Africa, that were brought out to build the railways, etc. And they then were used to, because they had the contracts, they were remitting funds between Kenya and the west coast of India. And that was the beginnings of the bank. And it's slowly but surely grown. Now, in terms of the way the organization is run, it is a fully fledged, professionalized organization. We're listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Family members are involved in the business, but they've been able to take a step back, separate the family wealth from the organization as well. And there has been the grandsons are now involved in managing the business, and the business has grown over the years. So we share exactly the same qualities as many of the businesses that are here in your audience. It's just we're fortunate that we're now celebrating our 50th. It's our 50th anniversary this year that we're celebrating. So that's 50 years of that continued succession planning within the organization that has put us where we are. We have to be here and to be part of this because part of the whole issue on succession planning and wealth creation, etc. You need a financial partner, and we believe that we are that financial partner for your growth. In my personal capacity over the years, I have unfortunately witnessed the negative side of no succession planning, and the fact that if it's not done correctly, businesses can, and very rapidly, after if there isn't proper, and it goes right the way through to your personal wills, trusts, etc. If you don't have that in place, and the business is not handed over into competent hands, the business can be run down in a very, very short space of time. And that's extremely unfortunate, especially when it's taken years of sacrifice and to build something up. And without proper planning, without proper legal planning as well, it can disappear very rapidly. And I think that's why today's discussions resonate really well with me. And it's even in your personal life, so outside of succession planning, making sure that you are properly taken care of, that you have your financial and your succession plans in place. And that starts with having a proper will signed up and understanding where the assets are, what the PIN numbers are for your various items. I'm very fortunate. I've got a very forward-thinking mother. She has a file with everything inside it, including, her grandson Tyler wanted a chair. There's a note to say, Tyler wanted this chair, please ensure that he gets it. But that's going to the next extreme. But it is important to have this. But I think the most important is that we can assist you in bolstering the growth and the resilience of your separate family enterprises. This is also not something that we do as a sprint. This is more of a marathon. Sometimes it takes it to start the process, and you need to have good partners in that process. It might, part of your planning process might require the need for a financial or financing event, and that's where Iron Verge come into play. You need to have the services of an accountant. You need to have the services of a good legal advisor, and that is also part of that entire planning process. And it can sometimes take years. We worked with a very big family business in Tanzania a number of years ago, And it took us nearly 5 years to restructure the business, to bring in accountants, to create a holding company, and then just so that the next step could take place. It's not something that is done overnight, and then it's never too late to start either. Never ever too late to start. I'm grateful that Edward has been able to come in. He was at the last event. He is here today from Ironburg's capital, and Edward, who's the CEO, will be talking to you in a short while. Edward has a number of years of unique experience in the field of financial advisory services, and I thank him for taking his time to come here and equip us with more knowledge. As a bank, we remain steadfast in our commitment to supporting family businesses through knowledge sharing, bespoke financial services, and strategic partnerships. And thank you for choosing I&M Bank, and allow me to emphasize that we are on your side. We have a strong foundation, and we're a bank that has future focus. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the morning.
Can I ask the I&M Bank team to stand up? Are they here? I think they are here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a clap. Thank you very much. Now, for the keynote address, I would like to invite Oshitiwa Wabwanziro to introduce our keynote speaker for the day. Again, for those who are not here, small disclaimer, I was in school with his baby brother. He was very clever, equally stubborn as me, but very clever. So, Oshitiwa Wabwanziro, please introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The coffee is not strong enough. I have a simple but non-simple job to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. Our keynote speaker has handled some of the largest and most cutting-edge transactions in Uganda. He's an advisor to several local and multinational companies with new and usually complex or large-scale transactions in the region. Of course, he's a licensed attorney. He practices law as an attorney and counsel at law in the state of New York, as well as an advocate, commissioner of oath, and not a public in Uganda. He's also a certified commercial arbitrator and mediator by the Uganda Center for Arbitration and Alternative Disputes Resolution, CADA. He works for a firm called CATS, in short, Katende Sembewa Advocates, which was started 55 years ago and still going strong. And there's a lot of family business in that firm. 55 years ago, there are very few enterprises you can look up today in Uganda, which is a full-scale service law firm providing all legal and additional services. CATS is internationally ranked as the #1 law firm in Uganda year on year by the Chambers and Partners, the premier benchmarking league table for lawyers worldwide. Our keynote speaker is Omkungu Sim Katende. He's Omkungu because he serves on the board of Umproze Holding Trust. Welcome with me, Council Sim Katende, our keynote speaker this morning, who is the head of corporate and commercial practice areas at Katende Sembewa Advocates.
morning, everyone. Morning. You know, it's not every day that you get introduced by OHT. So I think we need to clap for OHT. But it's a lot of those memories I'm going to brag about when I go back to the office. Now, I was asked to be given some of my qualifications, but part of the reason I'm here is besides my legal work, I also happen to work in a family business to an extent. So many of the issues we're talking about, I have personal experience. I have worked with my father, I've worked with my siblings, I've worked with some of our other partners who have other children in the same office. So I have a fair idea of the dynamics that we are facing as we are discussing this topic. So even as I'm giving legal advice, there are also some of the practical anecdotes that will come through. So thank you everybody for taking time to be here today. At the start, I would want to put a few disclaimers. You know, lawyers always say, I don't want to say something that might get me in trouble. So for starters, this is going to be a very uncomfortable topic. Because family matters, succession, etc. So some of the examples I might use, some of the things I may say, might touch you in an unusual way. But I think that is why you're here. The purpose of our being here is to address them in the room. You know? That thing we're always running away from, we always want, but today is the day when we should face it. Particularly those of us, if you're a parent, you face the reality for your children. If you're a child, the chance for you to raise some of those questions you might want to ask your parent, but might feel a bit uncomfortable in another setting. So my hope is that by the time we're done, there will be an opportunity for you to have got some ideas and seen some of the things which you might want done. Now, I think I can ask the lady who's working on the presentation, but while she's coming, I think everybody here has a mobile phone. So let's start with that. Can everybody take their phone out? And I think we're all connected online here. I'm going to give you a small thing which you should all follow. How many of you have gone to a website called population.io? Please write it down. Population.io. Not .com, not .co, not .what. Population.io. This is going to be a very big setup for what we are going to discuss today. Is everybody there? Or even if you're not, maybe in the interest of time, I will speed up what you will find. When you go to that website, it will ask you on the first page to enter your date of birth. So you enter the day, like maybe today is what, 15th, you enter 1-5, you enter the month, you know, write March or April or whatever it is, enter your year of birth, enter the country you're from, you enter your gender, male or female, and then click go. So I'll take 10 seconds to see, maybe if anybody has been able to successfully enter it go. Has anybody done so? So just move to go. Once you've done that, you move, just scroll to your left. It will show you your relative age to the world. But that's not the important one. I want you to move to the next slide. The one, what is my relative age in my country? What is my relative age in my country? If you have got to that slide, I think you realize that this succession planning is not something you shouldn't be thinking about. So for those who have not yet got there, let me speed up the stats a little bit. If you are 30 years old, you are older than 76.6% of the people in Uganda. 30. If you're 35, you're older than about 82-83% of the people in this country. If you're 40 years old, you're older than 88.8% of the people in this country. This is just 40. If you're 45, you're older than 92.5% of the people in Uganda. If you're 50 years old this year, you're older than 95.5% of the people in Uganda. In short, you didn't think so, but you're all senior citizens. If we're talking about elections and the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't participate. So, I'm bringing this start out because many times we come for these things and we think, that's something I'll do when I'm old, when I grow up. I'm trying to tell you, you're all already grown up and you should all be thinking about success planning. Remember, I've just put a cutoff of 50. Now, imagine if you're 55, 60, 65, 70, as of the statistics of Uganda, you should really have already done your succession planning. So, I think this is a topic that is very relevant to everybody in the room, whatever your age is. And I would urge you to please go back and ask all your friends to check this. They will know where they stand. So, starting with the presentation. Particularly for the people who are over 50. You know, some of these things, interestingly, I want to see how many of these things actually apply to you. Can everybody read what is on the screen? No, if it's not, then it's no problem. I'll just tag it from here. So these are questions which many of our clients who are in that age bracket come to us with. So somebody is saying, I'm growing older. If I became medically incapacitated right now, what happens to me or my business? My children, you know, this generation has a habit of sending their children abroad to go and study and do what? My children are abroad. I fear they will sell everything as soon as I die. You know, these people have a habit of, I've studied in the UK, you die, there's land in the first thing they do is they're going to sell it. Let me have sentimental attachment to it. And it's even difficult for me to talk about my will or things. It's very taboo in Africa to discuss death. There are realities. Many African families, you have step families, you have step children, you have step siblings, you have extended family members you look after. If right now they are all behaving because I'm around, what happens if I'm not there? How will they get along? What will they do? Others have put up a very big business, and you see some of the people here were lucky that, as I said, the parents are here with the children. But you put up your business, but your children have no interest in it. If they're there perfunctory. So your worry is, I built this thing. Is it going to die because the next generation doesn't want to run it? What should I do? That is a simple practical one. Suppose I died today. And by the time they go through letters of administration, the probate, etc., that process will take a year. What happens in that period in between when nobody can make a decision on this business? What do I do? That is the kind of concerns which we're getting from people. Then we've got the ones who are working with their parents, who are dealing with their parents, who are even slightly younger. The ones who start with, I have young children. If I die today, has anybody set up how are they going to go to school? How are they actually going to survive? Who will look after them when I'm not here? These are the ones who are much younger, they're not yet adults. Then, the very difficult one for those who work with their parents or work in a family business. My parents are very bit older, maybe they're above 50, but they don't want to talk about estate planning. It's a very difficult topic to raise with them. They don't want to talk about animal of authority. You see them entering into ventures which you have a question mark on. They are accumulating more debt. They've made you a director of the company, but in reality all you're doing is signing, that they're the ones keeping all the decision making. So you find for 10, 20, 30 years you are on paper director, but in reality you don't really have a say. And you're worried that if something happened to your parent, all of these obligations which they have incurred, you are the one going to be held responsible for them, yet you had no say. So how do I address such concerns? Remember I said delicate topics. So if you're a parent, think about what your child is thinking of, or if you're the parent, if you're the child, what is my parent doing to make it easier for the succession plan? So, I was asked specifically to talk about estate planning. Now, estate planning really is determining how your assets will be preserved, managed, and distributed. So that's really your planning. I have my estate, how will it be preserved, how will it be managed, how will it be distributed? Now, you can have a long topic on just preservation, on management, and on distribution. So for today, I'm not really going to touch management. You know, that section which I think the CEO of INM mentioned. talk about how do I get external managers, how do I do that? That's a different discussion. This one is more what can I do to preserve and what can I do with the distribution of those assets. And every family needs to take this into account. Why is it important that we do the estate planning? I'll start with the most basic, self-preservation. Many people think that estate planning will only kick in when they die. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, nowadays people live till they're 80, 90, 95, 100. So many times, you need to plan not for the period after you die, but for the period also when you fall sick and you're incapacitated and you can no longer run the business. So you are there, but how is the business running while you're there? So if you plan properly, you will be able to say, even if I fell sick today, I can find a way to make sure it is done. Some of the people who are here with their parents, I'm going to ask the parents a difficult question, or if you're here with your spouse. Are you sure that your spouse and your children will make decisions in your best interests if you were suddenly incapacitated? Think about your children, the way you've dealt with them, the way you've organized. If suddenly they say everything you have, they're the ones making decisions for you. You're incapacitated. Why I raise this difficult question is, I think anybody who has dealt with NSSF took a survey, and apparently they said for most people, I think for 90% of the people, they said the men, their needs to feed was their spouse. For women, it was less than 30%. So less than 30% of the women put their husband as their needs to feed. So that is an important thing. When I say, are you sure your spouse is going to be looking out for you? It's not as straightforward as it looks. So have that in mind. That's why you need to make the plan yourself. Dispose of your wealth in a manner which you want. If you don't do the planning, somebody else is going to decide how your wealth is determined. If you plan it yourself, then you'll actually be in a better position. You don't want a situation where it's the government that is deciding how your money and how your estate is determined. So if you don't make a will, if you don't do the planning, all the things you built, someone else will decide where they go. Minimizing family wrangles. If you do the planning, you will decide how your finances and your assets are decided. If you don't, I think, I was talking to Alice, my partner there, and we realized that you can say most of the cases in most law firms are about land disputes. And most of those land disputes are about families fighting over land. You open the newspaper, is it who got killed in this family dispute, who has been in court 10 years? When you look deep, it is usually siblings who are fighting. Now, one thing is, it's bad enough for siblings, but you're finding people who are fighting over their grandparents' land. My grandfather owned this land. He's giving me an example that the family which donated land to King's College Board in 1905 is now, I think this is what, the fourth or fifth generation, is now going and saying, we want to claim that land back. This is 100 years later. But people are still fighting over their grandfather's land. People in their 70s fighting over their grandfather's land. So if you don't make these things clear, this is going to keep on going. Protection of family wealth. Now, many times we are lucky that they talked about INM and saying this is the third generation of INM. And I think Asian families do this a lot. You find it's the third, fourth, and fifth generation. With Indian families, you don't find that much. Perhaps because they've not done this planning. If you plan it right, you will know it will go down. If you don't, you're going to get to those problems. Your assets will not be protected. You might be the founder. You might make the right decisions. But will the next generation do that? When the outside influences come in, when they get creditors, when they get new spouses, how does that affect them? Obviously, protection of the family wealth, that's even basic. You don't want to lose it when things go on. We've talked about generational wealth and the impact it may have. Sometimes even teaching your children how to manage wealth. We all have this story of the father who says, I walked to school, I rode a bike, I went through, but these children, they were moved in cars, they are lazy, they don't, then the generation afterwards even worse, they all study in foreign places, like it's the village, and they say this is the place that funded them to go there, but they don't value it. So you haven't even prepared that generation for how to value what you have built. So all of those, and of course, there is tax issues. Now that may not be a very big thing in Uganda, but if you have assets out of Uganda, anytime you're passing on property to the next generation, there is a huge tax issue. Tanzania has a bit of it, Uganda not so much, but whatever you see there is coming here. If you talk about inheritance taxes in the US, URA is very, as we all know, it is finding ways of, they're taxing everything from the moment you wake up till you die. So they will find a way to even tax you as you die. So you have to be prepared for how to deal with that. So what does the state planning involve? I'm going to give the simple Ugandan one. The two things which everybody I would advise to start off with is largely a will or a trust. A will or a trust. Simple code. I think they mentioned many parents. How many people in this room have a will? Apart from the IME interview. IME employees are not allowed to tell. How many people here have a will? Remember, I told you you're only the age bracket where you should have a will, but you can see it. In fact, the good thing about the will is when you start writing down things you want to pass on, that's when you realize you either don't have anything or because you can sit there saying, you know, I'm a director in this, and you realize, hey, I can't pass on that directorship. I've been working in this company, I'm not a shareholder, I actually don't have anything to pass on. So the will exercise is also a wake-up call for yourself. It's putting a mirror. How many people here have a trust? Again, I think it's really able to see, I promised so and so this, but this is how it's behaving, and I probably even take it back. But the idea is, if you've got a living will, it can help reduce some of these issues. If on the other hand, you say, no, I don't actually want to be the living will, I want to be the testamentary will. That's the one which comes into place after you have passed on. And that's the more common one. When people think of a will, they think of the one which takes effect after they have died. Problems with the wills which are after you die is you have to take into account that they could be contested, they take a while to get enforced, etc. But I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So, living wills and testamentary wills. Now, when you get a testamentary will, after you have passed away, there is a process which can take anything from 6 weeks to 12 months, depending on how quickly you do it, getting letters of probate. That is converting the will into action. This is what I've written. But how do I say, suppose I have died and I've said he's going to be my next of kin? How does he get a letter of probate? How do they transfer the assets into his name? How does he then distribute them according to my wishes? That whole process can take anything like I said, anything from 6 weeks to 2 years, depending on how fast people work and whether or not it's contested. But what happens to the people who die without a will? If you die without a will, then there's what they call getting letters of administration. Now this one involves your next of kin, your family sitting down, they have a meeting, they agree, you appointed so and so as the administrator. He also goes through the process of you go to the administrator general, you go to the court. There's the whole process you again have to go through. And that is in a family where they have agreed. Now, I want you to imagine our African families, which very rarely will agree. Many times, if it's a man, there may be more than one mother. So a man may have had 2, 3 wives, they have other stepchildren, he may have one. So to get all of them to agree on who the administrator should be. Many of our cases are about estates which 10 years down the road have never agreed. They have never agreed. Some it may be just a simple logistic. The court says, I want all the beneficiaries to appear before me for identification. 4 of them are, one is in Australia, one is in London, they can never synchronize their timetables. So just because they haven't done that, your business is stalled. Because nobody is making any decisions. Nobody's there to decide. And where you fail to get an agreement at the end of the day, the administrator general takes over. So some government official, and I'm sure everybody in this room has a lot of confidence in our government officials, they will take over your estate, they will be the ones who will decide, and usually their only solution is, remember Solomon? Let us sell and cut the baby in half. You have these big apartments, let's just sell everybody, take one, you split the money. Yes, you put up that clock. Your idea was this apartment is supposed to look after the family for the next 20 years. So you see the danger of leaving your business and your hard work to the decision of somebody else who you have not chosen. When you don't make a will, that's what happens. The second thing I talked about is the trust. Now, trusts are very common out of Uganda, but many people in Uganda don't use them. So what I'm hoping for today is that everybody here will leave with a better understanding of the trust, and it should be something which you should really think about. So what is a trust? Essentially, a trust is like a company to some extent. I think that's the easiest way I can think about it. Is you set up an illegal entity, and then you transfer all your assets into that entity. So if you have land, if you have shares, if you have whatever, you say, all of these things which I want to put in my will, let me put them in the trust. You appoint a board of trustees to manage it. When you are alive, we normally say you should be the protector, you should be the one managing the trust. And the benefit of that is the law now provides for it. And it's something which can be set up in 1-2 months. It's not very complicated to set up. So there are two types of trusts. There are what they call living trusts, the ones you set up while you're alive, and then those which come into place after you are dead. So one can be, I've set it up, it's already working as I'm alive. Another one can be one of those that kicks in after I have passed away. The benefit of setting up a living trust is while you are alive, you're the one in charge of it. You can control it, you can manage it, you can decide, rather than wait for, and you can even see how people work out on that. There are many advantages of using a trust. You remember the disadvantages I talked about in the will? Many of them can be dealt with when you have a trust. So, if you set up a trust, so let me give you an example. You own a business. You have shares in that business. You own maybe, let's say, a block of flats. You own some land elsewhere. If you die and you only have a will, even if you have a will and it is followed to the letter, for that 1 year before somebody gets profit, the business is stuck. Nobody can make a decision because the banks may not even give you access to your money. If on the other hand you own a trust, the trust never dies. So the very day the business can still keep on running. All of these family wrangles go out the window because it's in the name of the trust. If you have children and beneficiaries, they don't inherit that block of flats. The block remains with the trust. What you say is the money, the rent that is coming from that block of flats will be paid out to you people. So meaning they will continuously get the benefit, but they will not be able to wake up and sell it. So that child who is in Australia cannot sell it, but he still gets the benefit of that land. You will get a son who, let me be politically incorrect, perhaps is not quite as good at managing the business as you are. If you leave him to his own devices, in 6 months he'll sell every day. If it's in a trust, he can't sell because the only thing he has is the monthly money that is coming from it. He cannot get rid of your estate. So you want a thing to remain for generations after generations. That is the way you keep it. You will get a daughter who is very well behaved, very competent, and then she marries somebody who perhaps influences life in a different way. After 3 months, they are divorcing, they keep telling us about equality, he comes for half. If he comes for half and she inherited that piece of land, she'll have no choice but to sell it. On the other hand, if it's a trust, she'll say, sorry, it's not mine. All I'm getting is what's coming up from that trust, so I've protected it. You'll get a nephew who is mentally incapacitated or physically. Hey, I can't work, but you need to look after him. If his other siblings sell the land, in 2 weeks he'll be on the street. On the other hand, if there is a trust, whether he's competent, whether he's whatever, he will have something that will give him some income for the rest of his life. And you can appoint separate managers. So, do you see why putting something in a trust, if you're looking at generational wealth, is one of the smartest things to do. And that is why if you go to the much more advanced countries, if you go to the US, most of those families you see where you're seeing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations, it's because the property is owned by a trust. If you leave it to one individual, it's not very easy. And if you ask even the people who are working in your companies and your businesses, they may not have the same confidence in your children that they have in you as the founder. I will not give examples, but I think everybody here in this country can understand businesses where you see the founder has done something, the next generation does not do as well, by the third generation, the business has left. So if you set up a system that will protect these people from themselves, then you will have actually done a good job. So my very strong recommendation is if you pick nothing from here, please go speak to your lawyers and please find out more about the trust if you are looking at generational wealth, if you're looking at keeping this. So I will end quickly by saying what are the common pitfalls in estate planning and how does one avoid them? The first one is obvious, failing to make a will. Remember we took a poll. All of you have not made wills. Please go back and look at that. And as I said, please get that wake-up call as to what you actually own and don't own. That is what a will does for you. So you haven't made one, please make one. Otherwise, that administrator general will decide for you. 2, not updating your documents regularly. I'm assuming everybody in this room has a national ID. But how many times have you seen people where you send somewhere and they say, oh, we need this document? You say, my passport is not up to date, my visas are not up to date. Yes, no, my degree certificates, I know they're somewhere. Yes, I bought this land, but we never really did the transfer. Is the land in the name of a company? Is it in your names? Is it in your... So just organizing your documents. If they're not organized, everybody may know you own that land till the day you die. And that is when the person who you bought it from and never transferred, their family comes out and says, that is actually our land. As long as you're alive, those problems don't arise. But the minute you're not there, I and him are friends of mine, and Mr. Sam is a very close friend of mine. Last year, they took us through so much trouble on one of our accounts where they kept saying, I think this previous working place, bring us, what's that? UBOs, bring us this document, we're blocking your accounts, we're doing, I think all the banks went through that exercise, right? Show us the ultimate beneficial owner. So, now that you've done all of that, and then you pass on, think of the mess you're leaving your next of kin. That process I told you of getting letters of profit, suddenly now takes another year for just that exercise. So please update your documents. And for those who say they have wills, many times people make a will, and after 5 years they don't update it. They've got more land, they've sold some of the things which they're giving out, but they're still not updated. So please go back and check your documentation. If you set up a trust and you're thinking of it, please think of the right people. Everybody has that very good friend, but by now you know your friends. You know who you should put in charge of the trust. So I strongly recommend, if you're thinking of a trust, do a living trust and make sure you are the protector, you are the person who is in charge, at least when you arrive. There's nothing as bad as I've set up a trust, given it to other people, and they're the ones who start doing all my things before my time. So please think about the people. The same way you think about the executors of real estate, those should be the ones you have in the trust. There's so many aspects of the next generation which you don't think about. What happens if, remember, what happens if your children die before? What happens if their spouses get divorced? What happens if there's a new tax issue that comes up? Again, all of these are issues which if you sit down and do the planning right, your trust should be able to cover that. So by the time you're done, you will sleep very comfortably knowing if anything goes wrong, at least I did my part. So I will end by saying the best time to make a will or a trust or real estate planning would have been 10 years ago. The second best time is now. So I'm hoping that what Njogo has brought us here today is for us to have that reality check. We're not young anymore. We've all been through COVID. We've seen so many close people die. I don't think there's a person in Uganda in this room who goes a week without being required to contribute to some funeral, somebody who's sick, somebody who has died. And that belief that it only happens to others, unfortunately, is not true. As I say, most of our work in the offices and in the estates. So Father Time is never defeated. Please put your affairs in order, make a will, and if you think you want to take the extra step, think of making a trust if you have sufficient assets which you want to pass on. If you do those two things, at least you have minimized probably 60-70% of the problems that will arise, and you have made your life a life easier for not only yourself, but for your children. If you don't, as everybody here in this room knows, you are guaranteeing a fight in your family, and sometimes, even worse, some of those fights will take place while you're still alive. And there's nothing as painful as a parent having your children fighting over the assets when you're still here, just because you were not clear as to what everybody will be getting. So make it easier for your children. So I will end with a caution to the parents who particularly are working with their children. Parents make this mistake of saying, I have educated you, I paid your school fees, I told you to work, I gave you a job. And therefore, the child should be eternally grateful for 25 years of working with the parent who ignored your return. So you always have this thing of, but I'm doing these things for you. And then, 20 years later, the child actually realizes that the things are actually not theirs. There's another brother somewhere who has not even been part of the business school you're handing over to. So parents, please be honest with your children. Please make it clear with them. And also for the children, please have those discussions so that you also don't invest 30 years of your life and then wake up and realize this is not what was intended. As long as there is clarity, and that is where these documents come in, you will ensure the succession planning and the generation wealth. As long as you keep it opaque, you are guaranteeing there's going to be a fight, and your estate, 2-3 years after you pass away, will be no more. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Sim another round of applause. I could see the room becoming a bit chilly. People are getting a bit nervous. Some of the things that Mr. Sim was saying, and that's why we are here. We are here for realities. Sometimes we like to skidoo around issues. But the funny thing is, someone was outside. I heard someone saying, some of us, we are new parents. Next time, we organize an event where there's a playground outside, so the next generation is also hearing. But that's the crux of the matter. I'd like to thank you, Sim, for saying some very sensitive things. But now we are going to go into the Q&A session before we go into the panel session. We're going to take 4 questions. Please keep them very short and to the point. He will be back in the next session, during the panel session, to take your questions and answers. We have an usher this side and we have an usher this side. And the ushers, please wait. There's one there. There's another usher here. Yes. We're going to take 4 questions for Sim, then we can go into the panel session. Does anyone have? There's a question here from this table. This gentleman here, yes, you can start with the name.
Thank you very much for the presentation. 2 short questions. What if a child, your child, makes a will and includes my property? Is it possible? He has willed it in his will. And then the second one, you say that if you start a trust, it cannot be broken. It goes on for generation to generation. But at some point, maybe you may need to break the trust. How can it be broken? Thank you.
Thank you. Full disclosure, I forgot to mention. My name is Paul Martin. So that name is Mrs. Joy. So there is no correlation. There's a question she does. Just asking me. Another question from this side. There's a gentleman here.
Good morning. My name is Fred Chigozi. Thank you very much, Mr. Mutende, for your presentation. I had a question about the trust idea. We've investigated it ourselves, but one of the big issues, and I think you mentioned it in your presentation, was the presence of URA. So we had thought of setting up something similar to that, but we found that the tax implications were very negative for what we're trying to do. So could you please give us some guidance on how we manage the tax implications? Because we don't trust much as you may earn from, say, that block of flats you mentioned. Also, the trust itself was subject to tax, so we are finding kind of a double taxation issue. So perhaps you could advise on how to handle the URA issue.
Thank you very much. Fortunately, Mr. Mohammed is here as well and can answer part of that when the time comes in this session. Yes, there's a gentleman here.
Thank you very much for the presentation, excellent presentation. I just have a simple thing. I'm interested in the issue of creating a trust. Just tell us briefly how you go. Does it have to be witnessed by somebody? Does it have to be done through a lawyer? How do you go about this?
There's a gentleman there in the mask at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Sam Tikamo from Ghana University of Science and Technology. My issue is on living will. There was a scenario where the son kicked the father out of the house. So, I'm saying, is there a timeline for implementation? Otherwise, they will kick us out. The moment you say that house is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so we can take those for now.
Thank you very much. So is the microphone? Yes. Okay, so maybe let me just go backwards from the last one. The living will the son kick you out? So the first is, if you make a living will and hand over the property to your son or the person, you have actually handed it over to them. So meaning it belongs to them. So it's like you cannot be, what's that phrase? Political, it's a phrase we learned in school, it's now politically incorrect. It's what an Indian gave, but you give with one hand and you take it back. So if you're going to make a will, a living will, and give out that property, just like I gave the example of the prodigal son parable, the property now belongs to the person you gave it to. So I would not advise the house you're living in, giving it as part of your living will. So give away the things which you are not using immediately. The other part about the living will is you can do it in quotation marks. If you sit your children down and say, when I die, this is going to go to X, this is going to go to Y, this is going to go to Z. You don't have to physically transfer it at that time. But at least they know that will minimize the issue so that they are not as surprised. They are not as surprised. But the answer to your question will be, if you actually hand over property, that property belongs to them and they can sell it, they can do anything. In fact, most people don't actually kick you out. They will sell it to somebody and the person they sold it to is the one who will actually come and do the kicking out. So be careful as you're doing the living will. Give out those items that go in that story. Is it related to them? Yes.
Just a question within that. Does the concept of usufructuary rights pertain in Uganda, where you can give somebody a usufructuary right for the rest of their life?
Yes.
If you are in that position.
Yes, you can. And already in Uganda there is an equivalent. You know, if a man passed away, what used to happen more than 5-10 years ago was the minute most people, if the husband passes away, the brothers of the husband would come and kick the wife out of the house. You know how many cultural practices are. But no, it's now our house, it's our family. Sometimes if the wife is from a different tribe, it would even be easier. Now the law actually specifies that if you pass away, your spouse is entitled to stay in the family home until she passes away, even if you will it to someone else. So that's an example of the right which you said you have. But you can't sell the property, but you have the right of use. So you can also design your will and say, this land belongs to X, but I have given X the following rights to use it. Maybe they want to cultivate, they can grow on it, they can do that, but they don't have the power to sell it. So you can create that as well. Now, the other question, maybe touching with the question which was raised, the Maraka question. Your child cannot give away, you can only give away what you own. So if it is not in his names, if it is not theirs, you cannot will property that belongs to your parents. Remember when I talked about getting your documents in order? If the land is not in his names, he cannot give it away. So that is why it's important to have your documents in order. And that is why I talked about that delicate discussion between parents and children. Many children have the belief they own the parents' property because the parents have led them to believe that this is yours. But when in reality the parent has not physically transferred that property. So the answer is that should not be a worry, provided you have not handed over that property. Belongs to you, you can will it to anybody else. Somebody asked about the process of creating a trust. Actually, creating a trust it's almost like creating a company. You will require a lawyer or a tax advisor. So they will prepare a constitution for the trust, which is like the memorandum and articles of a company. You will appoint a board of trustees. These are the people who will be managing the trust. And you will then transfer the property and have it registered with the Ministry of Lands and list the properties that go in. I'm simplifying the process here, but that's roughly what you will go through. So, like I say, it's not a very complicated process. Within 1-2 months, you will have your trust up and you will have moved the items into it. So it's not very difficult. But the key thing to remember is pick the trustees, meaning the people who are going to be the board managing the trust, very carefully. And I strongly recommend while you are alive, you should be the one who is the major trustee, and you should have the rights of what they call a protector, the person who can replace the trust members. So any lawyer you talk to should be able to help you set it up. It's not very, very complicated. It's just that people in Uganda are hesitant to reveal their assets, now you have to put everything in there. Now it's registered at the land registry, so people will know what you own. Many Ugandans are hesitant to reveal what they actually own, so that's the one drawback. And Fred asked about tax. Now, we have a gentleman here who I think is supposed to deal with tax matters specifically. I don't know if I'm jumping on his parade if I answer before he does, or maybe we should wait and deal with that when he's here as well. The answer, as I always say, is URA will always try to get taxes from you. Remember, I gave that. So they will say, yes, it's a trust, you're earning revenue, and you're still going to work. But think of it like it's a company. If you had a company which owned that property, and the company was making money from it, chances are there will be a tax implication that is there. Even if it was you as an individual, when you get your dividends, when you get what, there's still going to be a tax implication. So you can move around, you can circle, but what do they say, the two certainties in life are death and taxes. So there will always be. Privately, we can advise you in ways you can minimize those taxes, but I don't want to go into tax avoidance schemes here, but there are tax avoidance schemes. We can find a clever way in which you can minimize those taxes, but you will always have to pay some taxes. So the trade-off you have to ask yourself is, which is a bigger tax to pay? The taxes I pay when I have a trust and there's generational wealth, or the taxes in quotation marks allowed to pay when 5 years after I've died, my business is no more. So you have to weigh which of the two taxes do you actually want to pay. I covered everything. I think, sorry, there was one other question. This is Maraka asked. The second question. How do you break up the trust? The same way. You can dissolve it. It's just like the way you break up a company. So even after you die, there will be a board of trustees, there will be people who change. Over time, people will adjust the memorandum and articles of the trust incorporation documents, because the trust system which was set up in 1900 cannot be the same one which operates 100 years later. Over time, there will be changes in the law. So it will evolve, but the difference is the trust cannot die. It's like a company. Unless you dissolve it, unless you kill it, it can be there for 1,000 years. It can be changed, but it will always be there. So that's its strong point. It doesn't have a finite life. It won't. It can last longer than human life.
We'll take 2 more questions. There's a gentleman here, and then there's a lady there, and then we'll go for the session.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Potin Mohan. So I wanted to know, what is the difference between, for example, if I have assets here, and I want to give power of attorney to my wife.
So if you had a what?
I have my assets in the and I'm giving power of attorney to my wife, mentioning if she can sell, she can collect rentals in my behalf or in my name. So, in that case, if I didn't make a bill and I just had something bad on me, does she be able to sell the property, or she's having a legal implications because of not making a bill?
Sorry, the quick answer is, if you've had a will, the will will only take effect after you have passed away. So while you're alive, it doesn't matter whether you even have the power to sell, because that only kicks in after you passed away. Once you pass away, if you've given the property to her, she has the power to sell and distribute it. I think your question is if you're incapacitated.
Yeah.
If you're incapacitated, then she doesn't have the power to do that because the property is still in your names.
But already I given the power of attorney to her, general power of attorney, with all the powers of selling, any can managing everything.
Then that's different. It's like saying, if you have the property right now,
yes,
and you give her a power of attorney to sell,
yes,
then she can do it while you're around. That's the difference.
When I'm telling,
it's a power of attorney. It's like saying, I've authorized, I've given somebody the power to do this. You can have a power of attorney which says, in the event that I fell sick and I was in a coma and I was in these circumstances, she has the power to access this. So let's say an example. Suppose you had a fixed deposit with INM Bank. You would give them a document which says, in the event that I become incapacitated and I cannot sign and cannot operate, and maybe I'm sick, and the evidence can be brought to that effect that the bank verifies it, she has access to that bank account. So that's something you can do when you're incapacitated. But here, for purposes of the will, I'm assuming, will only come into effect after you have passed away. Because once you're alive, we don't want people meddling in your property while you're still there.
okay, after the 10 minutes, if I didn't make a bill, then I just only give the power of attorney.
Sorry, I know there are many questions that will be asked.
I didn't know
The good thing is, the whole team is there. You can go, and I think you came with business cards and many. Let's answer a few more questions so there are many people in the room. They will answer. Let's get a few more questions from one more person. You can handle it privately as well. Don't worry. Don't worry. I know this is what happens at family business every year. People come with real questions, but let's one more person ask a question, and then you will handle it. Don't worry. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Sunga. I have a question on the trust. Supposing you probably heard about 10 trustees and the owner, if one remains, does that one person remain as sole the owner? Or if that person dies of eventually, what happens? So at what point, probably before this person dies, what will remain to come, the administrators constitute a new trust, and they have a right to bring it and constitute a new one before the dies of.
Thank you. I think, fortunately, when you're incorporating your trust, all of those questions can be dealt with. It's like when you're doing a will. So the trust will specify how a trustee is appointed, what happens if one of the trustees dies, what happens if the trustees drop below a particular number, because obviously the trustees are not going to live forever. So usually your trust document will put the steps you have to follow to do that. It's like when you're making a will, you may say, if I pass away, I want Mr. Maraka to get this house. But in the event Mr. Maraka dies before me, it should go to Mr. Antolome. In the event Mr. Antolome predecessors me, it should go to, you can specify that. So the answer to your question is, the trust will specify how any vacancy is covered. I think, let me use the analogy of a board of directors, because I think that's the one most people are comfortable with. Most boards will have a provision saying, if one board member dies, the others can appoint a temporary board member until the next annual general meeting where the shareholders will appoint a board. So there's a mechanism that is there to fill the gaps. So in your trust incorporation documents, they'll provide a mechanism for how trustees are appointed, trustees are removed. You may appoint a trustee, the trustee also falls sick, or it turns out to be very difficult and it just refuses to sign. So there must also be ways in which the trustee can be removed. There are very many people who are very nice until they are given power. then they behave differently. I know, I'm going to use a political incorrect example. We always used to tell us this, that when people are dating, their behavior is very different. When they get married, you sometimes see the true side of someone. So when people get in there and become the trustees, sometimes you need to remove them because of what they are doing. So all I can say is when you're sitting down to draft, they will walk you through those steps. So just like him, I can go into the line details, but I don't know if it's time for us to go through that. But the answer is there will be a mechanism that does that.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give Sim a big round. Sim, thank you for being very kind. And thank you for telling us some truths, however uncomfortable. And we're very happy that the room is engaged and alive. We'll be back in the next session, as we are going to do after this. Don't worry, you're not going very far. So, we usually say healthy, wealthy, and wise. Njovu is giving us the wisdom. We hope to be wise from it. But now what we want is a small health break. So for those of you who can stand up, please stand up. For those of you who can't, you will use your hands. And I'm putting pressure on people who say that they will sit, but we know they can stand up. So we're going to spell the word family with our legs. And those of you who can't stand up, we're going to spell the word family with our hands. Are we ready? Are we ready? Please, and that's why we need the help. I'm not feeling energy. Stand up. If you can't stand up, please use your hands. I can't do this at the same time. So I can say we don't do the one at the hand, and I will do the one at the left. Okay? How do you spell family? F. Then the letter A. Capital letter. And then M. And then I. And then L. And then Y. Then a big full stop. Okay, can now sit down. Now we are going to quickly go into the panel session. For the panel session, as usual, every year, we do something slightly different. We invite members of the audience to come and introduce the people that will be on the panel. So for that, I would like to invite, and they'll stand behind me, I would like to ask Irene, who will be moderating the session, to please come. And there's a team who can help us do some of this layout here. And ushers, please come and help us. So I would like to invite Lydia, the father. I would like to invite Mrs. Baine. I would like to invite Diana Serukenya. And I would like to invite Hamisi Mukasa. Fortunately, he's the only man on the panel on that invitation. But it's okay. It's okay. We shall balance it out. So they're going to introduce each of the panelists who are going to come and sit up here, and the session will be moderated by Irene. Thank you.
Proprietor, Slim and Slender. I know a lot of ladies are my clients in very well. So happy to be here. And since I want to get another opportunity, thank you very, very much. And I'm really glad I'm here with my daughters. And they've heard what you have said firsthand. I don't have to go and report. Please meet our speaker, Alice Namuli. Alice is a partner at Katende, Sempewa and Company Advocates. She has over 20 years experience in corporate and commercial transactions, specializing in technology, media, and telecommunications law, where she is one of East Africa's leading authorities on artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrencies. Welcome with me, Alice.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Diana Serukenya Lugoera, and I came along with my brother, my sister, and my brother-in-law. I've been given this privilege to introduce to you this gentleman, Haj Muhammad Sembija. Haj Muhammad is the tax partner at Ernst & Young, Uganda, and has over 20 years experience in tax advisory, group restructuring, tax due diligence, transfer pricing, and tax compliance assignments covering various industry sectors. He has worked with Uganda Revenue Authority and Ernst & Young. EY provides advisory, assurance, tax, and transaction services that help solve our clients' toughest challenges and build a better working world for all. Haj Muhammad is also a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants of United Kingdom and a member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Uganda. He's the board chairman and majority shareholder in Picture Enterprises Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, Haj Muhammad Sembija.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Habis Mukasa Kakomo Jr. Sewagude, and I represent Namo Enterprises Limited. We've been 32 years in the making. I'm second generation of that business. And this morning I have the pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, Mr. Edward Burbidge. And Edward founded Burbidge Capital, now I&M Burbidge Capital, in September 2010, and has run the businesses in Kenya and Uganda as the Chief Executive Officer since then. Edward has led the execution of 50 mergers and acquisitions, private equity, mezzanine, debt and capital markets transactions in Eastern Africa. I&M Burbidge Capital specializes in advising businesses in the region on significant capital raising through IPOs, private equity, debt and managers and acquisition transactions, and mainly focus on mid and large-sized companies with a typical transaction size of $5 million to $300 million US. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Edward Burbidge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hamisi, you've grown up. Small disclaimer, I went to school with Hamisi and was a young man. Actually, the voice is really calm, but I'm happy to hear that you're keeping the family business. Over to you, Irene. Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome to the panel, dear panelists. I would like to first of all thank Council Team for, I believe, what has been a very, very insightful presentation. I have personally picked that if you do not plan for your wealth, someone else will plan for it. It could be in a good way, it could be in a negative way. And our panel discussion today is going to focus on the myths and misconceptions of estate planning. And without further ado, I would like us to delve into this discussion by beginning with Council Sim. From a legal perspective, what are some of the misconceptions around estate planning and how can they be dealt with?
It's sort of a link back to what I touched on. But maybe I want to say something about my partner Alice here. One of the reasons she's here. Alice, remember the discussion we've just been having? We have a living example of what should be done with the trust. So Alice's family is one of those who fits the Uganda description. where you have a very large family, you have step-siblings, you have parents, you have relatives who are in 4 different continents. And fortunately for her, when her late father passed away, they actually set up a trust. They have a system where they're doing the rotating. She's one of the trustees. So we have a living example of how that has worked, of how it's actually working. So maybe after here, if you need to speak to somebody who has gone through the process we talked about, you should be somebody you should speak to on that. But the answer to your question, the biggest, I think the single biggest misconception that we have found is culturally, I think in Africa, or mainly Uganda, it is very hard for people to talk about estate planning. I think that's it. People can talk about so many topics, but it is always a taboo topic. People have this belief, if you tell me to make a will, it means I'm going to die. If you tell me to make estate planning, you people want to take my things. If it tells me you go work and make your own, it should be so. Because it is difficult to talk about it, that is the reason why it is not done. On so many other things where people are comfortable discussing the topic, you find that there is a lot of jurisprudence, there's a lot of work done. But this one is always a difficult one. So the simple hope we can have in this room is, if you get comfortable discussing this difficult issue now, you can address it. If on the other hand you don't, then all of those concerns will arise. As I've said, very few people are courageous enough to make a will. Very few people are courageous enough to take stock. Very few people are courageous enough to sit and objectively analyze their children and say, this one can manage, this one can't. Very few children can objectively look at their siblings and agree that I think my brother is a better person to handle this. So all of those are the difficulties we have. So my hope is, if you take nothing from here, it is saying, let me discuss this topic, because as I said, without giving examples, we've all been in situations where maybe they know people close to you get incapacitated or pass away, and you're left with the burden of having to manage that estate. Yet it is something you could have dealt with before. So the biggest misconception is, I should not talk about it, things will sort themselves out. You know, just keep the ball down the hand. That's why I started the presentation by showing everybody that you don't have the time you think. You don't have the time you think, you're only the oldest 70% of this country. 70% of people are younger than you, so you don't have the time to, or the luxury of ignoring this topic.
Thank you very much. And very from what Ancestor has talked about, a lot of people in our culture especially, wills are a taboo. When you ask someone whether they have a will, or when you tell someone I'm writing my will, the next question is, do you have a chronic disease? Are you passing on tomorrow? Those are some of the questions, right? Councillor Alice, why is it important to have a will? And from your experience, we've been told that you have a family where you had a will, you had a trust. Break down the process for us.
Thank you, Irene. The truth is that it's only later that we really appreciated as a family pretty much what our father had done. But when he was still alive, he had a living will, and everything was very clear. He talked about clarity. I think that helped him. I have a family of 15 siblings, 4 mothers. So you could imagine what could literally happen in a situation like that, right? But then I think he sat down and he told him that, of course, he lived much longer life, died when he was almost 91. So he just made it very clear. He had a very, very big estate, which definitely could have become very chaotic. Now, and then he kept on sharing whatever he wanted after his life. But I think to get to that point, you must be very comfortable in your skin that you can actually die and you're happy to pass on and also live for the next generation. Then he actually told us that what he taught us that we just pretty much, for him as a custodian of pretty much what he had passed on. But in terms of the actual structure, because I had someone here asking about it, many of you have companies, right? So you can sit down and set a memorandum of articles. What are memorandum of articles? For the trust, you will have a constitution. You sit down and agree. So my father specifically wanted certain things to be done. He wanted certain things to be done to his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what they should do, how they should contribute. So we also have this space where there's like a huge forest. He loved nature. He was like, if there's anything you could do, please, this would be my contribution to humanity. If there is a way to keep it, so all of us knew this. There's no way man should be trained. So even in a constitution, all those things are there. How to keep the property and in what state. Now, when it comes to, I've told you memorandum of articles, then you appoint the directors will be the trustees. So I told you have 4 mothers. Each maternal line, so we call them maternal lines, has a representative. I'm the first, so my maternal line. So you have 4 trustees. He passed on, and then you have 4 trustees from each maternal line. You just agree who would be the trustee from that maternal line. And then even in the constitution, you agree that when that person passes on, it will be someone else from that maternal line. So at any point in life, each maternal line is what? Represented. So already that, I think, takes away the chaos of like, I'm not on the other board, I'm not on the other. So I thought that really helped us. And now you actually rotate. The chairperson also, so we have 4, you choose and say, this person will be the chairperson. But you can also agree and say, since the other person, the chairperson is actually not here, because like Sim has told you, they're all over the world, it becomes difficult to execute, right? So you agree and say, I'm not able to take on these 2 years, maybe someone else will do it. But trust me, it helps a lot, because every property in there, the whole estate is covered for, and because of the transparency, my father actually also planned, you know where our property we have burial grounds, he bought an extra property to bury like his in-laws. So like my husband is not Ugandan, not his in-laws, he's the people who are marrying your daughters, right? Yeah, because for an ordinary burial ground, they would reject them, right? They'll be like, who is this person you're bringing? No, you said, don't worry. There's an extension here for anyone you think does not deserve to be a part of this. So the clarity and also while he was alive, it definitely helps a lot. But guys, all this is good talk, but being civil, I think it's also, I think helps a lot. Now someone could say, civility, where do you learn it, how do you, because people say, is it education, is it, I don't know how you explain it. But for us, the fact that everything is in ink, I don't own like that estate, you can't sell it, you can't do anything, but I also note it down. It's for my children, my father's children, and his children's children. So I'm a 3rd generation of that.
Wow. Is anyone inspired? I'm very, very inspired, and I must say that your family is very organized. However, I know that for a lot of us, we are not at that level. And very many times, for some of our families, there's been scenarios where someone passes on, there isn't a will, this person has a lot of property, and it needs to be allocated. I know you touched a bit about it, Councillor Sim, but I just want you to delve deeper, because those are the realities of a majority of us in this room. What happens when the deceased does not have a will and they have this property that needs to be split or taken over?
Thank you. I had not gone into the detail of the presentation, but I think maybe I can go into it now. When somebody dies without a will, there is no will, so you just know their property is there, but we don't know what to do with them. What the law provides is it says you're supposed to appoint someone who will be the administrator of the estate. That person's job is to administer the estate. That person or the persons. Now, how do they decide who that person should be? So I'm going to walk you through, in an abbreviated format, the steps that should be followed. So ideally, when somebody has passed away, I'm trying to show you how this process can be long. You will be required, if they passed away in a hospital, you have to get a death certificate or a note from the hospital. If they passed away outside the hospital, you have to run to the LC to get that. Then you go to NIRA, and then you get those documents. Then they'll issue you a death certificate. Then you take the death certificate to the office of the Administrator General to confirm that, okay, this person has actually died. They allocate you an official to handle that. Now, normally, the Administrator General will say, who are the next of kin of this person? That is usually either the immediate family, whether it's the wife, the children, and she will say, either go to your village and hold a meeting, or come and hold a meeting in my presence. So all of the heirs and all of the beneficiaries, anybody who's related to that person, the immediate family. So if there are two wives, if there are children, the stepchildren, they want all of them to be identified. They hold a family meeting, and in that meeting, they're supposed to agree as to who the administrators should be. Whether it's 1, 2, or 3, whatever number you pick, that is what should happen. In practice, many of those meetings are hard to organize, and many times there are disagreements. So that's usually where the problems start. But assuming they all agree, and they say, we've appointed these 3 people as the administrators, then you move from the administrator's office and now move to court, the family court in Machine, the registrar, where they'll say, we need to identify these people, they all have to appear before the registrar, then the registrar sets a date for all of you to go and appear before the judge, you identify, they get the objections, all of their documents. Remember I talked about national IDs, etc. After all that is done, then you say the land titles, the properties are still in the names of the deceased. You then have to get documents from courts, take them to a land registry, have those transfers and changes done, get the formal appointment as an administrator. Do you see how this process, how long it is? And all of this is where there is no challenge, there is no dispute. If you get a dispute, before you even appear in court, you have to run an advert in the newspapers, I think for at least 14 days, so that everybody has the right to challenge that estate. Now usually, that's when a disgruntled relative, a disgruntled sibling will then file a court case and will say, no, it should be me. Why did they appoint Timothy as the administrator, why not Alice? I want to. Then you get into court for. Meanwhile, the property is sitting there idle. There are people who are encroaching on the land. Because nobody is the administrator, there is nobody running to protect it. Even when they get there, they say, what right do you have to be on this land? Show me the documents for letters of administration and the like. All of that is, if I were to put it delicately, is probably what has paid my school fees the whole of my life. Because many of these disputes end up at offices like this. So that is what keeps lawyers in business, that is what keeps land dealers in business, that is what keeps other people in business, because of that. So the answer to your question of what is it you're supposed to do, I've outlined what the procedure should be. And that is what you should be following. The reality is many times is different. So I'm going to pick a leaf from what Alice said when we talked about civility. The reality is, hopefully, people will try to be more civil while they are alive, so that in the event that happens, this process is made a little bit more smoother. But if, God forbid, that does not happen, then you should be prepared that you will go through that process. And should you fail to agree, then the Administrator General comes in and says, you people have failed to agree, I am now going to be the one to manage this estate for you. And usually, because the administrator's job is not to manage the estate, they do think of how many estates there are in Uganda. Their usual solution is, let us sell and distribute. Let us sell and distribute. The law usually has some proportions as to if someone has died without a will, how things should be distributed, this percentage to the spouse, this percentage to the children, etc. So that is what usually happens. But the net result of it is the estate gets divided and separated. So our theme today was succession planning. So my answer is, unless that family can agree, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have an estate that is either split up, or they're going to be in court for the next 10 years. And if it is a business with nobody deciding, the business will definitely collapse. If it is land, by the time in 8 years' time you come to an agreement, there won't be much land to speak of. So I think at the start, the gentleman from Ireland talked about 80% of businesses are family businesses. I think this is now where we need the reverse. If we don't protect that 80%, what I think it will end up is 80% of businesses, instead of being custodians, as Alice has shown, 80% of businesses are preparing to be divided once the founder leaves. That's what we're guiding against. This is, I think the statement should be 80% of businesses are family businesses until the founder dies and then they're split up. That I think is the reality of where we are. And I think our job here is to make sure we park that trend and stop that from happening.
Thank you very much. And from personal experience, when my mom passed, she didn't have a will. And I happened to be the administrator of her estate. And I kid you not, it took over 2 years. Over 2 years. So if you want to save yourself the time, the cost, please make your will today. Don't wait. Before I go to Haji Muhammad, I would like to recognize the presence of the I&M Bank Group CEO, Mr. Kihara Maina. Thank you very much for joining us today. Over to you, Haji Muhammad. What does succession planning mean to you?
Thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues. When we are talking about succession, what are you succeeding? So we are talking a bit about a business, as opposed to the estate. There is some business which somebody has done their effort to put it in place and it's thriving. But that person wants to have the comfort that that business will continue, will outlive his natural life or her natural life. And in succession, it's not necessarily about outliving your natural life, but outliving your leadership life. When you are the owner, it doesn't mean that you should be the leader. It's not automatic. Even your people, your family, it's not automatic that they must be the successor to you in case you are the leader. It's not automatic. So, from my experience, that's where we normally mix up things. We think, now Uganda says, my firstborn is the heir to my throne. He's also my successor in the business. Doesn't totally add up. And I think for me, this question, what I understand is succession is leadership. Like my firm, Ernst & Young, was formed in 1903 by Ernst & Ernst, had a small accounting firm, I think in Ohio, in the US, and Arthur Young in Chicago. They formed a firm called Ernst & Young. We even don't know whether they have anybody related to them in the firm today. But the firm has thrived for over 100 years. So, to me, when we are talking about succession, especially the business leaders here, you need first assess yourself. You're not actually the right leader for this business. When I was being introduced, I think they left out something. I was the country managing partner for EY from 2011. But I said in 2017, you know, now I'm older than 95%. So when I was in my early 40s, I would be on the plane. I think I would travel like every week, twice crisscrossing. And of course, by then, digital was not as effective. All meetings had to be physical. South Africa, we were on the plane all the time. But I reached the time I said, but surely, I had other guys around me. We are in partnership, and I had my other partners. Then I said, but should I read actually the CMP? Where is it written? Is it in the best interest of this business? And I was actually feeling tired year in year. Then I tabled them. After they resisted, because ordinarily a managing partner will only retire when he retires from the firm. But I said, no, it can't be like that. In the best interest of this business, I can work with you. The guy whom I was actually, whom they elected. I said, whoever you choose, I'll work with him, but I'm around. But I want to pass on this leadership. And it worked out very well. So I'm still in the firm, but I'm no longer managing partner. But the business is actually thriving. So you don't have to be, I'm chairman, I've just set up a small business as I'm about to retire in the firm. Then I said, business, I call it the destination. Business is the final destination, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an accountant. You reach a time when those things of deadlines, they have to do their numbers by 38. You have to do the report. We work even up to midnight. Even sometimes you don't even have a weekend. I say, no. So you have plans. I just set up that business just because in the initial stages, I'm the founder, but I remain the chairman of the board. And I don't work there. I work in EY. And what I'm thinking, as it grows, we are in car import. As it grows, my children are there. I have my brother, the operational manager. I have 2 sons. Who I told them, if you are interested, come. And it's not a must that your children, we talked about it. It's not a must they will be interested in your business. My father was in the ranches, in the village. He had very nice ranches. I told him, but you guys, for us, we are not going to go into this cow. Don't do these things. So your children, not necessarily your people may actually be, but you can just, and I think we shall touch it. Once you formalize, that's why I've done to formalize this. Now, totally dead company, teach them through the process when it is still early, but as you prepare, you don't have to run that business. When you need the business to grow, I'm even retired in the farm, how can I grow that business? I need to just set up a mechanism, formalize, go make sure that the processes are working, and they can do autopilot. You just review at board, you have people helping you, the consultants, and Uganda businesses, advisors. Value for advice. The biggest point for us, it touches on succession. Even before actually you leave, you need to have succession in your mindset. In you yourself, you are still the leader, but have that succession mindset. In you, am I the best? Why don't I have all the skills of the current day-to-day young kind of business? We do things online. As long as I have the internet. I go in the market in Japan, after I can go in 4 markets in Japan on my phone. I look at the cars, I look at the check, I negotiate online. I agree, I reserve, I got my bag online. Whether I'm at the airport terminal, I pay, the car starts moving, I track it, as it reaches Mombasa. So taxation is really a process, and not necessarily the people who have your blood relationship must be your successor. Just have leadership, have systems, then processes should be able to help you to actually that business. Outlive even all these people you know. EY, over 20 years, is now a $50 billion business and still growing.
Thank you, very much. So are you the right leader for your organization or your business, and are you ready to lead leadership? That's something for us to think about. As a tax expert, Haji Mohammed, what are some of the key financial and tax-related considerations family business owners need to prioritize as they begin this process of estate planning?
I think 2 issues. One, documentation. Even before you get to the tax. In taxation, in our language, we say the tax tail cannot wag the commercial dog. When you see a dog, the tail can never lead where the dog is going. The tail follows. So tax is a tail. Don't make business decisions based on the tail. As long as it makes a business decision, like the trust Fred was talking about, you abandon the project because of the tail. Some tails are too grave, actually, about the mission. But there are usually ways, and legal ways. And actually, for me, Steve knows, that's how I earn my income. Yes, there are legal ways. I have, I think, 2 examples. One example, client had flown in. It's my client. He did not consult me. He was just passing by. He was going to a meeting. Meeting was in the afternoon. He arrived early. He said, "No, mommy, they're in the office here. Let me pass by." He passed by my office around. He didn't even open it. We chatted, "What are you coming to do now? Oh, there's this building. I don't look at it. Did you think about this? Did you think about 2 tax questions?" And I told him, if you didn't, you are going to lose this money. Don't sign. He was going to sign the agreement. I told him, don't sign, because it has not the tax aspect. So when you look at it, you can actually still make business succeed, and you are paying tax, and you are paying the right tax. Tax is a normal cost of business. Then you are paying electricity. You cannot do business and you think it's sustainable, and you are not going to be contributing to the economy. And you want the services. First do your bit, then you can do it properly in a sustainable way, pay the right tax on time. Because if you don't, I've seen in my experience, I think about 3 real business, live business, where tax was the death bullet. They had avoided, but time catches up. One of the cases was somebody who was connected properly in government. When he was still in the strong position, whenever the tax people would go to audit him, just a phone call. "You boys, get away from that place." But the records were there. After about 20 years, that guy left the state. When they left the state, they audited his company like all those years, and there was no way to survive. So comply, but you can comply in a way which does not kill the business. So for me, that's really what I can share.
Thank you very much. So comply, and comply in a way that your business can thrive. And the beautiful thing is that we have Haji Mohammed here with us. So we encourage you to please reach out to him after this and find ways you can be able to comply legally while ensuring that your business thrives. Now I would like to go to Mr. Edward. Family governance can be an effective means of supporting resolution of family disputes and can also enable the organization of the family in a way that the family knows the succession plan, who gets what, how the trust is being run, what tools can family businesses use to work towards strengthening their governance.
Thank you. Sorry for making you walk over. Very unchivalrous of me. Good morning, everybody. My name is Edward Burbage. I'm the CEO and the original founder of INM Burbage Capital, and we are a corporate finance advisory firm. We advise East African businesses on M&A, so basically selling their businesses or raising equity or debt for their businesses from $5 million and above. I had a set of slides actually, but I'm slightly worried about losing my audience at 10:10 with no coffee break, having been here yet. And so what I'm going to suggest is I'll just maybe refer to 1 or 2 of them while I answer the question quickly, and then I would suggest that we can share the presentation with you. We also actually produced a publication last year on succession planning and corporate governance in conjunction with the bank and IFC World Bank and a few others. So what I'm going to ask my colleagues to do, Malunji and Susan, if you can just stand up. Maybe give everybody a wave. Maybe a round of applause, yeah, thanks. So Maleji and Susan work in our Uganda office. We have a Ugandan business. And what I suggest is that you liaise with them, give them your cards, and me, I'll be around afterwards as well, so that we can share the publication and the slides. I'll just quickly refer to the final slide, Annette, if you don't mind, which is some of the transactions in Uganda that we've advised upon. Just keep going. Yeah, thank you, that one. I don't know if it's big enough for you to see from there. Maybe you've got better eyesight than me. Otherwise, just quickly, we advise Chimps Telecom, which is the biggest mobile money agent for MTN in Uganda, on the sale of equity and equity capital raising. Last year, we sold Guardian Health, one of the big pharmacy chains here in Uganda, and achieved an exit for the shareholders. We advised DFCU Bank on sale of one of their Rwandan subsidiaries. And indeed Orient Bank, INM, when they acquired Orient Bank here. So we've been very active in the market. We've found buyers and investors for a lot of businesses in Uganda. So just to give you that context, I come at the business succession and governance question from 3 different angles, actually. So one is I run this firm, and we've executed a lot of corporate finance transactions where we've sold businesses, which have been a succession plan, where the shareholders have got to the age where they can no longer run the business. And as I think Robin mentioned, and Sim as well, you've got to start early, because the equity value in your business is entirely tied up with the profit generating ability of the business, right? And to be honest, the older you get, the less energy you have and the less ability you have to keep generating that profit. And if buyers and investors to a business see it starting to go downhill, then, guess what? So does the value that they're prepared to pay for it. And if it even goes too far, then you can lose the value altogether if you haven't lost it to the tax bill first, yeah. So, we've advised on a number of transactions where the kids don't want to come into the business for one reason or another. They want to do another business, they want to work in a different country, there's no succession plan. So we come in early and we sell the business, and you can, get a $5, $10, $20 million check, which you can then do something else with and give to your kids, instead of just losing the whole thing. So we've advised on a number of those. And so I come at it from that context. I also come at it from having sold my own business, actually. So I have a personal experience with it. I think Sim will be a bit proud of me for when I started, because I think I was 38 actually, when I started that. So that's maybe earlier than you necessarily need to, and for me it was tied up with a strategic objective as well. So I sold my investment banking business to the INM group, and as a result we were able to do many more transactions together. But so I have been through that experience of selling my business as well, and so I feel like that gives me a sort of additional angle really to advise others, because it's still my baby. Even though I earned it for less time than others, I built it from nothing and put in everything to it and sacrificed almost everything in the years that I was building it up. So it means I think I can relate to business owners and those difficult decisions that they make. But the third angle, I don't know if you can move back one slide, Annette, is I come from a family business background. So in the UK, I moved to Kenya in 2011, actually set up our business there. In Uganda, I set up our business in 2013. But I come from the UK originally, and our family business is a manufacturing business in the West Midlands in Coventry, and it's just had its 150th anniversary. Yeah. No credit to me, by the way, I can't take any of that credit, but I can give some to my family for their foresight, and again, Sim, coming back to your point, planning early. Even when I was a kid, my older brother is the 5th generation to take over the business, and even when I was a kid, I can remember us being taken around the factories, and decisions being made, and we were encouraged to make a decision whether we wanted to come into the business or not. And so I think that thought process was started very, very early, on who the likely successor was. Was it going to be a family successor, or indeed was it going to be an external successor, which I think is where the governance and professional management comes in. So I really, really think there aren't, that many businesses that last beyond 3 generations actually statistically, but getting to 5th generation is really because of that planning early and starting to make very early decisions about succession planning. I think I want to leave it there because that's quite a lot of information to deliver. On the governance, it plays a very important role, but maybe we can come back to that in questions or when we speak, or indeed by sharing our publication. I hope that's okay.
Right. I believe a lot of us here have our parents, some of us have our children. Have we taken active steps to expose our business and what we do in our businesses to our children? And like you're saying, it's something we need to start early. When we begin this early, the children naturally, first of all, start to gain interest in our business, and you also get to see who is interested and who is not interested, which gives you some time to prepare, right? So let us go ahead and expose our businesses and what we're doing to our children. Before we come to our audience, in just 1 or 2 minutes, I want each of the panelists to just give us the top 2 actionable steps we as family business owners can take in terms of estate planning. Some of us have not really started, some of us have wills, we do not have trusts, some of us don't have anything at all. What can we do? Just to, and I'll begin with you, Kasuku.
Okay. I just want to, whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, to dissect it and come bottom up. So when I think of this whole problem, I've talked to you and Elizabeth, that I feel that in Uganda, the country we're in, we have the right laws, we have very, very good laws actually. The issue is here with enforcement. Now, seem to get through actually the whole process. It's usually very difficult. If someone even walk up to you and say, I can't do it, I can't maybe start a trust, I can whatever, a will. But now, one of the statistics actually I can show you is that so many of our wills are disputed. So meaning, even though you make a will, someone, if you don't have the stability I was talking about, it will still be disputed. The cases Kim was talking about, most of them in court, their wills actually, but they're disputed. Why? Mistrust. So someone earlier on when we were networking mentioned something which I actually believe. It's called, we need some kind of self-assessment when it comes to our culture. So many of these problems we deal with, they're in time, they're struggles we deal with. That I think in our genes, in our game, mentioned that you be the founder of a business, but you don't know unconsciously that you do not know how to handle a problem. You do not know how to let go. You do not know how to nurture leaders. And remember, you're being influenced 7 generations of your ancestors. So all these things come through you want to give away your property or your estate, but then something keeps unconsciously. So I feel like this is something definitely we need to self-reflect and find out what is that keeps us, from enforcing what actually the law provides, and also what really gets us in this kind of disputes. I think culturally, we need some kind of mirror.
Thank you. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about documents, wills, trusts, so the knee-jerk answer would have been the 2 things you need to do is make sure you draw your will or make sure you do a trust. But that's not the answer I'm going to give. I think for me, as I said, from a personal experience and from what we've seen, I think it ultimately comes down to have you mentally prepared yourself and your next of kin to the fact that they are just custodians. Many founders fight so much to do the business, they find it very hard to let go and don't understand why the next generation doesn't have the same passion they have. But then they forget that they never taught those children to like the business. So I'm going to ask 2, and these are very African questions. Remember, my job today is to give the uncomfortable questions. By a show of hands, and I'm giving a personal experience, I have a friend who is Jewish. And one time I was at their home and we were having dinner, and he was sitting at the table with his wife and children. And they were discussing the amounts of money in each one's bank account, including the children. Saying, how much do you have? Okay, what did you do with it today? How many people in this room have ever sat down at a dinner table and had a discussion with their children about their finances? By a show of hands. You notice the pigment of the majority of the people. Yes, remember I said to you I'm living the uncomfortable. And you notice that those are likely to be the ones which are 150 years from now. We raise our children saying we don't talk about money, we don't talk about business, we don't talk about succession. How many people on Saturday pick up their sons or daughters and say, Saturday in the morning, you're how old? You're 10 years old? Get in the car with me. All my movements today are going to be sitting with me. Or how many spend money sending them for basketball camps and things like that. Again, show of hands. Again, do you see where the problem is? Now, if somebody has from a very young age grown up knowing, you even told that this is the business, this is the one which pays for you, this is the one which feeds you, you will grow up in your mind, your eyes already, I want to protect this business. I have to make sure it lasts. I have to make sure I pass it on. And if you have that commitment, chances are many of these succession issues will be going. As I said, you will immediately see the kids who have an interest, so you will know, maybe I should keep the business for these children. If you find none of them have an interest, you will immediately say, you know what, maybe I should sell it, get money, and give it to them. If you find they have an interest, like he's giving an example, his family is in a different area, you say, oh, this child is interested in this. Let me help him in that area he does. If he succeeds that way, he won't have a problem fighting for the other estate. So, coming back full circle, the takeaway I think I would want for everybody is, if you're looking at succession planning, the real succession planning is saying the people who you hope to be your successors, please try to involve them from an early age so you can know whether they actually have an interest and they'll set in place the stages they need. And if they don't, help them succeed elsewhere so that the part which Alice has not told you, she's very diplomatic, is part of the reason why they were all civil. Is fortunately for them, all of the members have brothers and siblings. All of them were well educated and they were reasonably successful. So they did not spend their lives dreaming about when Mosei dies, this is what I'm going to do. Which is a big problem here. Now, if you help your children all get to a position whereby if they inherit anything, it's an honors, you have solved most of these. You have solved most of these problems. If you even find that one who is very weak and cannot really do it himself, and you create some source of income for him, so he's not going to come and fight the rest. That, if you do that, then all these other things we're talking about, the paperwork, the wills, the trust, the tax planning, the governance, all of that will fall in place. If on the other hand, if you picked me Sim and say, Sim, I want you because I think you're a reasonably good person at what you do, I'm putting you in charge of Mulago Hospital. Because I've had so many problems with Mulago, I'll be the first to say, I cannot do it. So if you get your child and hope he will inherit the same way in which asking a lawyer to go and run something which he has no interest in, that is a recipe for disaster. So the takeaway I would want for everyone is, go home, look at your children or the people you think will be your next of kin, instead of willing them the property. Will them the interest in the business and the assets and what you're doing. And if you can do that living will over the next 10, 15, 20 years, by the time it comes out, it won't even be an issue. Everybody will know who's going to get what, and it should be able to work. And I'm saying this from a personal experience. As I said, I grew up with a parent who was a lawyer. This is what I did, this is what I saw. So it was such a natural fit that no matter how many different offers and what I got, I already knew where I was. Probably had I not been exposed at an early age, had I not been shown that, you can actually make a living this way, you can actually do this. It also taught me what you call being long-term greedy. We talked about this farm being started in 1969, long before I was born. So every time I speak, I always tell people, my first job is to make sure this farm is alive in 2069. So anytime you're thinking that way, even the decisions you make will not be bad decisions, because you always say, I want to do this because it may affect my ability to be alive, or for a business to be alive 10 years from now. That, I believe, is much stronger than the wills, the trusts, etc. However, for practical purposes, I would say, please make the will, please make the trust, because remember I said documentation is important, but the strongest part is talk to the people, and then you will know if they can do it, or if they don't, help them in the other areas, then you can hand over to external managers. Thank you.
Wow, 2 issues for me. I think the top one for me is formalize. As you formalize, make sure that you are up to speed with corporate governance. You have a correct accountant, you have a correct lawyer, and a tax advisor. Even if it's not me, have them. 2, these people whom you want to succeed your business, like all the people have said, start giving them practices in their small way. What I've done, I asked my children, after I have more than a football team, but what I did, I gave them a challenge, each of them to prepare a business proposal. If it passes, I will give them their capital of 1 million. And if they report after 1 year, every year we review. Who has made a profit, I add the equivalent of the profit. I've just done it now for 2 years, so that they can now learn money matters. If somebody knows how hard to grow 1 million to 1.2, then even if you give them the leadership in a bigger business, they already have the ability to grow the wealth and to manage it. So I think it is important, the way I see some of these, I call them the .com parents. You visit a kid in the school, you take a pickup. Honestly, mentally you are killing that child. So you must prepare them so that they value work. They must value how to earn instead of how to spend. And once they are in that position, then you can introduce them into the business gradually. My sons in my car business, they are at the factory floor, they are not the managers. Because that's their ability is. And depending on how they perform, one of them has now got a branch he's leading, now he's getting much better. So involve them, grow their money management and wealth management skill, then over time, if they are succeed, it will be automatic. And it will not be an accident throwing them at the deep end of the sea. So for me, these are the 2 really strong issues I would really think important.
Thank you. Pitfalls?
For me, the answer is a brief one. Get good advice. Yeah, and you might say that you might be suspicious that I've teamed that up, being an advisor myself. And even more so because I think the 3 important types of advice here are legal advice, tax advice, and corporate finance. And I think, the 3 of us obviously, we do charge for our services, but I think, certainly speaking for myself, I imagine the others as well, happy to have a chat first, which doesn't cost anything, over a cup of coffee. And we also sometimes introduce people to other clients of ours who we've taken through the process of selling their business or bringing in external investors, just to give them that experience before they go into it. So I think, just to reiterate, do come and reach out and ask us for a chat if you have any questions and you want to talk through the process before you go into it, and start early, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we have a lot of questions. We're just going to take a few, but like I said, our panelists are going to be with us, and they will give us some more time. They can engage with each of us individually. So we'll be taking about 2 or 3 questions before we can close. 2 or 3 questions. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I'll go straight to the questions. One question. People who has a property residence in 2-3 different countries, Uganda, India, and somewhere else. A, citizenship of the spouse or the children are in 2-3 different countries. How does the will or execution of the will or allocation of the assessment of own will bypass something? So what are the technicality or legality?
All right. Second question.
Hello. The question that I have, there are 2, but they're quite interlinked. So on my end, it's more about the generation part. If, let me say you have a family business and you're the first generation after the father who has started everything. So you're over maybe 11 kids, and at the end of the day, you're putting your energy in the business and you expect maybe also your kids are going to have part of it. So how does that go down into this other generation for all these 11 kids that are having their own children? Then the other one on my end is when one has a trust and the kids maybe don't want to manage it, does the trust take over to manage the businesses that are already existing?
And we'll have 2 last questions. Yes.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I have 2 questions and I'll be very brief. How protected are shareholders? You know, you have a company, everybody has some shares. Yes, you do have your own shares, I suppose, and then that's all that you have a right to. Well, I presume that is all, or is it different? I'd like to understand that. Secondly, to tell the crappy fathers and mothers who are here, the children say, I used to work for government, the investment person. The children say you do not allow them in. You do not invite them, you do not tell them, and they actually fairly upset about that. Then the parents also come to me and say the children are not interested. So I don't know how you can help with that.
Okay. Yes. I
can project. She mentioned that there is a lot of disputes when wills are read. What causes people to contest wills? Is it the way they are written? Is it because when they are written and witnessed, there are gaps to doubt the authenticity of it? What if I take it on video and it will still be contested? I'm just wondering where are the major sources of contestation of wills?
That's going to be the very last one. Just for time purposes.
Thank you. Mine is a very simple and quick one. I get this question a lot from other people, and they ask that the Indians are the best at passing on one family business to another, and then going on for generations. How do they do it? I'm not sure if anyone can answer it or so that's the question. Thank you.
Right. I think we can begin with a will on, the question about why wills are contested, and also how do you handle the issue of grandchildren, and I'd like Councillor Alice to answer that.
In my few years of practice, 20 years, I would say, it's mistrust. Mistrust. And I told you earlier, this all stems from how we run our families, right from home. The way we run our families is there's no accountability from a very, from the smallest unit of a society in the world, a family. So some of these things, they don't have the best laws, right? How do you run, how accountable are you to your children, how accountable are they to you? So because all that is really missing, it becomes very challenging even after actually pass on, because no one trusts the other. Then the other thing is that we have a polygamous culture, which has actually failed to handle, to be also open about our polygamy, and to be, or maybe to embrace it, and also to deal with it in our state. So that is usually the first key thing. There's a will. No. I know there's another will somewhere else. And before you know it, I was there. Your father told me. Your father told me this. That he was suspecting that person is going to be. Before you notice it, no one is believing anyone, and you're in court. Usually that's a major thing. Then about the grandchildren is she has talked about the different children and how do you deal with that, the interest of the other children, right? So I'll give you an example for us. The trust covers so many, it's a very large estate with businesses in there, and the interest, so the interest of each child and each grandchild is at the trust level. What do I mean? Every maternal line, like for us, different mothers, right, is represented through their maternal line. Like now for my mother is me and my mother's children, right? Then her grandchildren will benefit from me. So everything, the shareholding, how it was divided, that is how it was worked out. And then now you will also ask how do the second, now I'm third, so the fourth generation, how will they come in? From a very young age, we've started bringing them in so that they also understand that they are custodians. We are handing over to them, and then they also have to hand over. So it's an obligation by them. So you have to hand over to the next generation. And you have actually to start very, very, very early.
Yes, thank you very much. Council Sim, how do you handle the issues of wills when your businesses are in different countries?
Thank you for that. But I think I'll also give a couple of comments on some of the earlier questions which were asked, because some of them cut across. I think Dr. Chiguzi asked about what is the power of shareholders. And from a legal perspective, really, the only obligation of a shareholder, the only power you have is you have a right to attend a general meeting. You have a right, if they are to vote when they are either appointing board members or matters that require shareholder approval. And if there are dividends given out, you are entitled to dividends as per your shares. And you have the freedom to sell your shares to somebody else. That's pretty much what a shareholder does. And that's why the job we always say is, you can be a shareholder for 10 years in a company and get nothing, while the managing directors and the directors are making a lot of money, if they just choose every year never to declare dividends. So in the context of, let me use the trust. I think what we're saying is, if you're a trustee, or if you're a beneficiary of that trust, when the board raises money, and they say maybe we've raised, as a give example, this business has got this much money, and they're supposed to distribute it to the beneficiaries. You are like a shareholder, you will get your share of that. If the trust deed allows you to vote out the trustees, then you have the power to vote them out. And if you say this trustee is not giving us what we're supposed to get, we have the power to vote him out and bring in somebody new. So for our context here, that's what I would think. For the normal corporate context, your real power only is saying, if I don't like the managers, I can vote out that board and bring in a new board that will do a better job for me. So that's the element of trust. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the benefit of that is, if you have children who have no interest in running the business, but you still want them to benefit, make them beneficiaries of the trust. They don't have to be part of the day-to-day, but they will constantly get some income from one generation to another, and their job will only be, let's vote in good managers who will run the business day-to-day. So I don't know if that answers that question. I wanted to also touch on her question about, we were 11 children and we're the generation after. How, and one person has been working very well. I'll bring in another question which I think she wanted to ask but was being politically correct. Suppose you're 11 and maybe you are the two who are actually working and the other 9 are sitting back saying, we have so and so, they have gas, let them work. But when it comes to the benefits, they probably want to share equally. And then you're worried that we're 11 of us. By the time we split this thing amongst 11, will there be enough for the next, especially these 8 who have no interest? If they don't, what are the odds their children will have an interest in the business going forward? Do you see why now, for example, the trust element comes into help? Because it means those who are keen to work will be able to work in the business and will probably be paid over and above for the work they're doing. Those who don't have an interest and just want to get a benefit will be able to say, we're still receiving some of, let me call them dividends, like shareholders, but we're not interfering with the day-to-day management. So I may have no interest in farming, but if there's a farm there, I want to get money from the farm, but I won't interfere with Timothy who's running the farm day-to-day, and I shouldn't complain if he gets more because he's doing that. It also means for passing on to the generation after me. If my children have zero interest, they even move to Nairobi, they should still be able to get something, even if they're not interfering day-to-day. So the answer on passing on is that's why I come down to the trust part, because it doesn't belong to any one of them. It belongs to the trust, and all they're getting is the benefit from it. The gentleman asked about the trust and saying, what if people are in different jurisdictions? How does it affect properties which are out of here? The answer is simple. If you've got a trust and you've listed the properties, it can affect properties which are even out of Uganda. The only difference is the way they are managed in those jurisdictions have to be in accordance with the law. So, for example, I gave an example and I said, you have a property in Uganda, you have a property in India. The property in India might have inheritance taxes. The one in Uganda does not. So if you're putting it in a trust, you have to take into account that what does the Indian law say about putting such a property in a trust? Is there some tax to be paid? You take, as I said, get the right advice and structure to cover that. If it's a property in London, is there some requirement that you have to meet? You do that. But the trust can cover across. It's like a marriage. I don't say because I got married in Uganda, when I cross to Kenya, I've ceased to be married. Otherwise, we'd all be operating very differently. Every time you left the country, you could say, no, I'm not married, I'm here, I behave in a different way. So think of it that way. But it just means that when it comes to a divorce, I have to follow the law of the country where I got married. I won't say I got married here and maybe divorcing under Russian law. So the answer is the trust can indeed cover properties across. In fact, the majority of trusts for the really wealthy people cover so many different jurisdictions. That is where, as you say, when you have the private conversation about tax, you can be very creative and end up paying pretty much nothing if you put it in the right jurisdictions where they are. And I think somebody asked about, what did he say, that it seems like Asian families are the ones who are able to succession and do it alone and all of that. My answer, I'm not an Asian, but I have very many Asian friends and Asian customers, and remember what I talked about is they start early and they involve the children in the business early. They don't wait for somebody to leave university and then he goes to the business for the first time. Usually you'll find somebody leaves school in the evening, he's doing the accounts. On the weekend, he's struggling to do the shopping. I'm going to give you a politically incorrect example. Fortunately, I'll not give you the name. But I have a friend of mine, and he told me when he was in Kenya, when he was in his equivalent of senior 6 vacation, that's what, 17, 18-year-old. The family told him, you go to Uganda and start our business. And he moved across during his vacation and started business. So he told me, I used to get on a bus and cross that border. This is almost 25, 30 years ago. And I would be carrying the money across. So I asked him, how much money were you carrying? He said, it wasn't so much. He said, what? I used to cross with like, sometimes $1.2 million, sometimes 800,000. So you can imagine my somebody. They're entrusting an 18-year-old to walk across the border with a bag of 1.2 million shillings. How many of you people have children who are under 10 years and have ever counted 3 million shillings? How many of you would trust your child with, I'll give you 2 million shillings, you go and shop? But you realize now, that gentleman, if at 18 he was entrusted with walking around with 1 million shillings in a bag, Years later, when he's handling a company with much bigger sums of money, do you think he can get carried away and say, I'm going to buy the latest car? I'm going to remember what he talked about. Because the example he gave, his was 1 million shillings, but the idea has already been implanted. So, I don't have the full answer, but I think the answer is they involve the children at an early stage. They are open to them about what they are doing. They bring in that idea that you're a custodian at an early stage. And they also tell them, when you finish whatever you're doing, you are coming to work in here. So the children either grow up knowing they're going to be in the business, or they can tell their parents pretty early, this is not where I want to be. So you do not make, as a parent, the false plan that I'm expecting to hand over to X when he doesn't have an interest. So lastly, I will touch, because this dovetails well into the last question Dr. Chigo's mentioned, which is very important, which is parents who believe they're handing over, but they're not handing over. So I think that's also, I think what you talked about leadership. It is very hard for a founder to give up. Every founder talks about how he wants to pass on, but their DNA most times is not the kind for handing over. I will not go verify that, consider it there. Yeah, but I think you understand. It is not easy for the founder to say, I am handing over. And then they don't understand why the children cannot be patient. I mean, Prince Charles got his job at 73. But if you look across in Europe, remember in Belgium and the other kingdoms, those queens used to retire. You go to Spain, the king would say, I'm still out, but I've handed over. I think it was one of the Middle East countries, I can tell someone, where the guy also said, I've handed over. So you see, there are situations where you can still be and say, I've handed over management. So the idea is parents can think that way. Then also for the children, also that entitlement of, I am doing this. The question I think as a child you need to ask yourself is, if this was not a family business, if I didn't have the right surname or the right connection, would they hand over management to me? Meaning, you have a skill set whereby if you are competing with someone who is not, if it was a fair level playing field, when you realize, when you take that mindset, you will then build up the skill set to meet that. Because if you believe the job should be good because of your surname, then I think that is why your parent is not ready to hand over. So even you need to look in the mirror and say, suppose they brought this expert with my qualifications, can I beat them to the job? If you're able to do that, I think it will show, and you will have less of these issues of will I come in, won't I come in? I think that also should be a challenge for the children to say, how can I get to that level, and how can I do that? And lastly, I'll say, I think those were the good questions. I think I've spoken as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering the question very well. And I believe that we could go on and on and on and on. And for us, that is what we want as Njoko. So please mark in your calendars, in October, we will be having another session that will be a whole day conference where we will dig deeper into some of the issues that have been talked about today. And we have some feedback forms that we have shared. Kindly ensure that you fill them in. Let us know as well, what do you want to hear about? What are you not sure about? So that as we are preparing our events, we are tackling some of these issues. Unfortunately, we have to come to an end. And I would like to invite Mr. Robin Bersto. Yes, Bersto, the Chief Executive Officer of I&M Bank, to come and appreciate our panelists, who I believe have done a good job, right? Let us, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for the knowledge that you have shared with us. Mr. Robin. And please ensure that you network. Mr. Hamesi, I know there are some Indian brothers of ours in the house, so please ensure you have a chat with them as well.
Sorry, I'm just getting given the last minute instructions. Okay, so I'm flanked by two women, and so I'm just listening and smiling. All right, we have something small, but I'll do that after I've said a few words. So what did we learn today? Well, what I learned is I'm not immortal. Thank you so much for the website, which I've already shared in my family group, just so that my sons know that in 2045, which is the year of my demise, so they can prepare themselves right now. Because on the 2 pages on, it tells you when you will die. So don't look at it. It'll be quite depressing. And luckily I have I didn't tell them I'm in Uganda. I gave them another country. So I'm not at 97, I'm at like 82. Because maybe I'm supposed to die at like 100 or something. So that's one. But I do believe one of the surprising facts that I saw today was when they spoke about a will. How many people are not prepared? And how many people are ready? Because when you're dead, it doesn't actually matter. You don't care, you're dead. But that's all the time that you sacrifice to build something for your family, then becomes it becomes null and void. And I think it's all enjoying. So if there's shareholders in the group, sometimes we talk to people about taking key man insurance. Or you might advise a family-run business to say, what about your succession? And it's like you have said a swear word. Because people don't like to talk about it. We don't like to admit our own mortality. But it's if you have built a business up and you don't want it sold, you don't want it collapse, you want to preserve that wealth within your family, whether you've got 1 child or 20 heirs to your estate, you want to ensure that that is done. I think there's enough people in the room. I know that I have staff that are here, salespeople at the back. If you want to start that conversation, they can point you in the direction. We don't charge fees. It's only the professionals who are allowed to charge fees, because we're not giving you advice. We can just point you in the right direction in that respect. So remember, you get what you pay for, so they're not providing advice, because free advice is sometimes not very good. Take opportunity to pay. I saw a lot of hands up after the panel was done. Take opportunity, grab them now, set something up to have that conversation. I think it could be good. And then, as said, I think that's exactly what Joe is all about. So to our panelists, Sim, I should actually start with Alice. Sorry, Dave. To our panelists, Alice, Sim, Mohammed, and Edward, thank you very much for your time this morning. Greatly appreciated. I think there's a lot of people here that have actually, from today's session, have more questions than answered, but that's a good thing, because then we've started everybody thinking about moving in the right direction, about asking more questions from the professionals. So thank you very much for that, and for Joe for putting today's event together. I think everybody's looking forward to October, and we're really glad to be involved with this really important, let's call it movement, in terms of getting ourselves together. So thank you very much. You don't have to stand up and take a photo. I'll hand out. So, once again, I'm ignoring Alice and starting. Can you I will pay on social media. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
this one's not for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us clap for the panel. Here you can take a photo.
That's the graph of age.
Uganda is a very young country. You can now come and take your seats. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our event. Please fill in the forms in front of you. Once again, as usual, as we start is as we end. We are going to ask the questions because some people came in late. How many people came in with a spouse or partner? Please put up your hands. How many people came in with a child? How many people came in with a parent? And how many people came alone? Now the people came alone, this is a message to you. You better bring someone else next time. Thank you very much. We have addressed the elephant in the room. See you at our next event in October. Have a good morning and afternoon and good night.
So guys, that has been it. That has been it. I know most of you won't understand the begin of mass. Very very important. Abantu bangi mufiiriddwa bakadde bammwe nga tebalamye. Business starter n'ofa n'ogirekera abaana ne bazirya. Waliwo olutaaya lweyayimba nti mulye ssente zammwe onoba bakakuziika abaana nga batunda benzi. So byebintu ebimu bye tubadde tusomako olunaku olwaleero just ogezaako kutuliramu ebisigadde ogenda kuba obisangako TikTok pages zaffe ne Twitter handles pages zaffe X not Twitter but anyway it's the same I&M Bank ojagenda ko Twitter I&M Bank Facebook I&M Bank tugenda kuba tusalaasalamu obuntu buno tugezeeko kutuliramu osobola okwongera okuba nga ate otegeera ebintu bino mbalabye temubaddeeko bangi kuba abasinga mwagala byawolokosa era mubadde mutandisa Kasuku ebyekisibo byaffe. That is going to be coming up next, but for now we're gonna have to call it a day here until next time. Video eno kitunuulire funa obudde ogibwokinge. They are raising very pertinent issues. Mubeere bulungi.